When most people go to Changi Airport, I believe that the carpets will be the furthest thing from their minds. But luckily for the carpets, patterns and colours are the things that I pay attention to. And this time, I turned 4 different carpet looks from the different terminals in Changi Airport, Singapore into makeup looks. For Terminal 1, the thing that stands out about this carpet design is the use of geometric shapes as well as neutral colours in this design. So I really wanted to just draw a bunch of rectangles and circles on my face. So I mapped out the rectangle first using washi tape because it's really easy to peel off my face. And for the first rectangle, I really wanted a specific shade of dark brown, but I didn't have a liquid shadow that corresponded with it, so I just mixed a couple of colours thanks to colour theory. And for this look, I started off with the darkest brown first because I wanted to layer a bunch of lighter shades on top of it, just to give it a little bit of dimension, so it makes sense to do the darker shade first. And the washi tape worked really well to give a really sharp rectangular shape that I didn't have to freehand. And for the beigey yellows in this look, I went in with the Haus Labs High Power Pigment Paint in the gold shimmer shade, which is more of a bronzy gold, which I think corresponded really well with that beigey shade in the carpet. And drawing in rough strokes using a brush to replicate that rough texture of the carpet, as well as another smaller rectangle on top of the dark brown. So that's the rectangles of the carpet covered, and now I'm going in with a grey liquid liner. And these grey lines corresponded to that really thin border that's around some of the rectangles in the carpet. But because I wanted to give a multi-dimensional look to this eye look, I went in with another high power pigment paint from Haus Labs in the silver shade this time, and I'm layering it on top of the grey lines. Since I was already using a bunch of liquid shadows, I went in with a Lancome liquid shadow in a more coppery shade. And I'm using the back end of a brush to just draw in some circles. And I'm going for a more abstract kind of look for this, mainly because this carpet design was kind of a lot. So I thought that a better representation of this carpet on my eyes would be to do a more abstract minimalistic look instead, using a whole bunch of mixed metal shades to give a little bit more interest and contrast to the look. And to finish off my eyes, I'm just curling my lashes and applying mascara on the top and bottom lashes, making sure that my eyelashes are extra lifted to make use of the negative space of the eyes. For blush, I went in with Rare Beauty's Bouncy Matte Blush in Worth, which is a warm terracotta orange blush, which I think matched with that coppery liquid shadow that we used, which helps to balance out the cool tones in the eyes. I'm then contouring my face with a VCA contour powder. For lips, I went in with Makeup Forever's Artist Colour Pencil in Endless Cacao. And then I dabbed on Huda Beauty Cherie Lipstick and Maple Blossom all over my lip. And this helps to create a more neutral lip, which I think suited this look the most because of the mix of the warm, cool and neutral tones in the eye look. And then I topped off my lips with Half Magic Beauty's Magic Brownie Lip Gloss. Lastly, I highlighted my face using a Dior Beauty palette. And instead of the gold in the palette, I decided to go in with this pale pinky shade instead. And this is the finished look inspired by the carpets of Changi Airport's Terminal 1, featuring geometric shapes and mixed metals. Moving on to Terminal 2, this carpet is actually my favourite of the 4, and it was the one that inspired me to do a bunch of makeup looks inspired by Changi Airport's carpet. So I'm starting off with this Beijing Opera palette from Florasis, and I'm mixing the 2 blush shades in it to create a peachy blush colour. It does look a little bit light on my skin, but I'm using it mostly to create a base for the eyeshadows that I want to put on top of it, and doing so helps to create a more blended watercolour kind of effect to the blush later on. And then deepening up the colour using this blush from Juicy, and applying it mostly in the center of the powders that we put prior, and this placement is inspired by the orange spots in the carpet. Next, moving on to the blue parts of the carpet, I'm taking this light teal eyeshadow and I'm using it to map out the placements of the blobs that I want on my eyes and around my face. And that's gonna be the contours of my nose into the eyebrow, and the inner part of my under eye, the outer corners of my eyes, and I'm extending the shape into a sort of U-shaped placement instead of a typical wing shape, as well as my under eyes. And I'm using this really fluffy blending brush to make sure that the edges of this eyeshadow is really nice and diffused, because in contrast to the carpet, I do want this look to look a little bit hazy. Next, I'm taking a darker teal blue shade and I'm using it to deepen up the center parts of the lighter teal that we put down. So I'm just going over all the different shades that we put down the first time, and I'm concentrating the colour in the center parts of it. And I'm also using the same brush to apply this colour to my eyes, because the new colour sort of blends with the older colour, and I think that helps with the blending, because when I do blend my eyeshadows, I always start from the lightest to the darkest shades, using a dark blue this time, and I'm using an even smaller pencil brush to concentrate the colour within that second colour that we put in, but again making sure that all the edges are blended out really nicely and smoothly, and using as little product on the brush as possible really helps a lot. And to help with that, I go in with the second and first brush again and again until I'm happy with the desired blend. And And I also decided to just place the little dots near my temple to sort of match that 2 dot situation we have at the nose. And I think somehow this made the look a lot more complete. Taking the brush that I used for my blush, I'm blending the edges of the blush together with that light teal. And I thought that doing this inverse color thing would work, but it sort of looked like a nipple, so I decided to erase it off my face, which I'm glad I did because this part was sort of distracting to the overall look. And I just went over the spots that I erased with some concealer on a fluffy brush. For brows, I decided to just go with a brushed up brow thing. I'm using the Rare Beauty eyebrow gel. I didn't want my brows to be too distracting, which is why I just ended up brushing them out. So when you're creating more editorial looks, it's really important to make sure that everything is in harmony and in balance so that it doesn't look too much, you know? After curling my lashes, I'm putting on mascara, and I'm concentrating the mascara on the center part of my eye, especially the bottom lashes where there is a negative space in between the shadows that we put. And you can already tell that this is something I really love to do because I did it in the Terminal 1 look as well. To add a little bit more of that peachy pink shade, I went in with this gel liner from Colourpop. And initially, I just wanted to highlight the middle portion of my under eye again. But looking at the overall look in the mirror, I just thought it looked kind of weird, so I decided to fill in my entire waterline with it instead. And I think this gave a more striking look to the eyes. And to finish off this look, I'm going in with this really old and inspired but I think still good lip gloss from NYX Cosmetics. I'm so sad that it closed down because it's really one of my favorite indie brands. I had not been able to find a dupe for this lipstick because look at that perfect peachy shade that's pretty much opaque in one side even though it's a lip gloss. If anyone has any recommendations for dupes, please let me know. Anyways, deepening up the lips, I'm going in with a darker lip gloss from We Makeup. And I'm just placing it in the center of the lips, sort of imitating again that gradient that we did for the blush and that's present in the carpet. And somehow this is my second time highlighting at the end of the look. Somehow when I do all matte looks, I have a hard time deciding whether I want to add a little bit of shimmer to it. But I do love my highlighter, so this time I'm using a non-glittery highlighter, which is this really pretty peachy shade from Glint, and I'm applying it on the high points of my face as well as in the center of my eyes. So it adds a little bit of highlight to my face without being too distracting. And the peachy shade also matches really well with the rest of the look. So this was the second look done inspired by Terminal 2. I again really loved abstract blurry looks and blue and orange is one of my favorite color combinations. So it was really fun to do and conceptualize this look. Next up is Terminal 3 and this one is a little bit more of again an abstract look. Terminal 3 actually has a couple of other carpet designs within it, but this one in particular is my favorite because of the different shades of blue that's in it, and I like that it sort of forms a firework flower kind of pattern in the carpet. So I really wanted that firework shape to be the style of this look. And for the base, I'm going in with my Danessa Myricks Vision Cover Cream in the white shade, and I'm placing it all over the center of my face. And I'm using my brush to diffuse out the edges because I don't want it to look really harsh and sharp. So making sure that this cream base is really nice and diffused first before setting it with my powder is really important. And for this, I'm using the Peri Para Oil Priming Powder. And I'm using dabbing motions to pat on the powder instead of swiping it around because I don't want to lift off any product. Next, I'm taking my Colourpop Matte About Hue palette and I'm using most of the blue shades in this palette, starting off with the lightest one. And I'm going over all the white parts of my face because the base of this carpet is a light blue and I don't have a light blue face paint, okay? So I'm using white and blue mixed together to make light blue. But using this blue shadow also allows me to create a gradient on my face. So after the white base has been evenly covered by the blue shadow, I'm going in with more of that shadow in the center of my face. Next, I'm taking this teal blue shade, that's the mid-tone shade in this palette, to create the fireworks, and I'm using this pointed soft pencil brush to create the strokes. And for looks like this, you don't really need to be super precise, nor do you need a steady hand, because I want the edges of the lines to be jagged, so I'm intentionally shaking my hand as I'm applying the shadow on my face, and I'm spacing the lines out quite evenly around the center of my face. Next, I'm taking this darker blue shade and then I'm going in between the first lines that we put in. Again, not making it too tidy, I want it to look more abstract and messy, but I'm being really intentional with my placement because I still want it to look like a firework. I'm then taking the darkest blue shade and I'm going over some of the lines that we put in. At this point, I'm already pretty happy with the density of the lines that we put down, so I'm more focused on creating dimension within the lines, and I'm using this really dark blue shade from the Vizia Dark Mattes palette, again going over the lines that we put in, and this gives a lot more variation between the lines. And even though the shape isn't fully symmetrical, I am trying to match the depth of the lines between the left and my right side of my face. So this pseudo symmetry helps to anchor down a really abstract look like this. I'm also using the same dark blue shade on the outer corners of my eye because I can't resist a winged smoky eye. And I'm not making it too precise again, I'm making it really messy, sort of symmetrical, sort of matching, but not. And doing smoky wings using eyeshadow is my favorite because I get to flick out my brush and get this really sharp precise line without much effort. I'm also going in with the same teal shade that we used in the beginning in the inner corners of my eyes before using this Huda Beauty eye pencil to tightline, just to add more teal to the look and to deepen up my eyes. And in my opinion, the addition of the smoky wing really helps to ground the entire look together. Next, I'm curling my lashes and putting on mascara, and this time I'll be using false lashes. And my natural lashes point straight down and I'm really stubborn, so I need to do this step so that when I put the lashes on my eyes, it won't look like my lashes are perpendicular to each other. And for my lashes, I'm using this one that I got from Taobao. And this pair of lashes have a spiky look to them, but for each spike, instead of being made up of really densely packed lashes, but instead they're made up of fewer lashes that are pointed towards each other. And this creates a spiky look without blocking the view of the eyeshadow that we put down. And the shape is reminiscent of the flat fireworks shape of the eyeshadow. For lips, I wanted to go in with something frosty, so I'm using Dazzle lip gloss from Rare Beauty. And then I decided that my eyes weren't dramatic enough, so I went in with another pair of the same lashes that I used on the top for the bottom. And this added more darkness to my eyes and also mirrors the fireworks shape again, so I'm really happy with my decision to add the second pair of lashes. To amp up the frostiness of my lips, I went in with a layer of Tarte Maracuja Lip Plump in Pearl, which is so intensely frosty and shimmery. I really love it. And then I topped it off with more Dazzle lip gloss by Rare Beauty. And this is the finished makeup look inspired by the carpet in Terminal 3. It is a more faithful recreation of the design of the carpet, but with my own grungy twist. And speaking of grunge, I'm moving on to Terminal 4. This look was actually the hardest one for me to come up with because even though this carpet design is pretty simple and there's not much colours to go off on, the simplicity of the design meant that there were too many possibilities. I almost wanted to do a graphic liner look using the rounded triangle shapes, but the thought of drawing thin lines that represented that brown barcode-like lines in the carpet just made me stop in my tracks, and I reworked the design to be more of a grungy, clownish kind of look. So I segmented the purple rounded triangles into different parts, and I sort of doing an inverse function graph shape on my eye, but I'm using purple plummy shades from the Colourpop Matte About Hue palette to do so. And this inverse function graph shape also lends to that clowny look that I'm going for. Using the dark purple shade in the Vizia Dark Mattes palette, I'm deepening up the curves of the purple shade that we put in earlier, closest to my lash line, because I like to put in gradients everywhere and you can't stop me. And I'm using a flatter, smaller brush to do so. Using the Makeup by Mario Neutrals palette, I'm taking the dark brown and black shades and mixing them together, and I'm connecting the bottom outer corner of my eye and smoking out and connecting the bottom curve to the top winged part. And I'm doing the same thing in the inner corner of my eye and extending the inner corner of my eye into a point using an angled brush. Taking a smaller pencil brush, I'm taking the purple shade and I'm extending the bottom lash line. And this look is essentially inverse mirrors of each other from the top and the bottom and from the left to the right, where the points at the center of my eyes is off-centered from each other. And you can already tell that I love to play with symmetry and asymmetry, and this is one of the ways that I do it. I'm then taking a white eyeshadow and I'm highlighting the inner corner of my eyes, extending it to the bottom curve, and this mimics the white highlights that are around the rounded triangles in the carpet, and I'm doing this on the top lid as well. I'm gonna put false lashes again, so I'm just curling and putting mascara on my lashes to create a base. And this time I'm going in with more sparse yet feathery kinds of lashes because, as I said earlier, I just didn't want to draw really fine lines. So I'm using the lashes instead to mimic the barcode-like lines on the carpet. I'm using a similar kind of lash for the top lashes. And I'm layering two different lashes together, making sure that the longer lashes of the second pair is layered on top of the shorter one of the first. But I'm just doing this because I don't have a fuller set of fluttery lashes, but I think it makes a pretty big difference in the overall look. For blush, I'm going in with Truth from Rare Beauty, which is a nice purple plummy shade, and I'm placing it more on the high points of my face, closer to the outer corners of my eyes. And for lips, I just went in with a couple of lip liners because I couldn't find one that was exactly the colour I wanted. So I first went in with Rent Dew by One Size Beauty, before layering Makeup Forever's Endless Cacao on top of it to neutralize the warm brown. Next, I'm taking Fenty Beauty's Gloss Bomb Stick in Hot Chocolate, which is more of a purpley brown, applying it all over my lips, and I decided that there wasn't enough dimension, so I went in with a black lip liner around the edges of my lips, and this one is a really old one from Colourpop. I wanted to add a pop of purple to the center of my lips, so I'm using Kosas's Lip Balm in Bikini Blaze in the center. Is it an excessive amount of lip products? Yes, but I think the final product is pretty worth it. And this is the final look in my Changi Airport series. I really hope that you enjoyed watching me do these looks. These aren't really for everyday wear, but I just wanted to talk through my thought process in the ways that I create editorial looks like these. So if you like this video and would like to see more makeup looks like these, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok. And if you like the video, do leave a like and a comment and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video.